Carla, the recording has started. Looks like everyone is just about completed entering the webinar, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Russ. And hello, everyone. Happy afternoon to you, and welcome to FGDLA's Government Learning and Technology Symposium System. I am Carla Lane. I'm the FGDLA Vice President for the Higher Education Sector and the moderator for today's workshop. FGDLA is a nonprofit professional association. We're formed to promote the development and the application of distance learning in the federal government. We actively foster collaboration and understanding among those involved in leveraging the technology and instructional media in support of the education and the training needs of the federal government. Our membership is derived primarily from individuals employed by the agencies within the federal government. We invite you to join with us in this exciting field. You'll find membership forms at fgdla.us. Look at the rest of the web pages. They're really pretty interesting. For our upcoming events, Helen, you want to change the slide for me? So for our next events coming up on April 17th, the topic is a certification workshop on AI and gamification presented by our own Dr. Jennifer Verricchio. And on May 15th, Chris Kaplan of the U.S. Treasury will present on instructional strategies that are used in training their staff. And on June 12th, U.S. Marines will present on their use of programs to meet security requirements. Dr. Erica Jacobs will lead that presentation. We hope you'll join us for all of these special online events. We are so proud that Zoom and Moodle have become such valued sponsors for FGDLA. They have been instrumental in helping us present the webinars. Russ, you've been actively involved in our sponsors and working with them. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to thank you, Carla. It's a pleasure, I know, for Zoom to be involved with federal government and Moodle, and we appreciate both of those teams and both of their companies and the great services that they provide for all different market segments, U.S. federal government and the others that they serve. So I'm sure they thank federal government, DLA, and all of the board and the members of this organization.
They have been outstanding partners. We're so honored to have them. They're giants in their fields, and it's a real privilege to work with them. So thanks you to Moodle and to Zoom. You guys are just the best. So moving on a little here, the topic of today's webinar is accessibility in the digital workshop, or the workplace, excuse me. The Rehabilitation Act, Section 508, was enacted to eliminate barriers to information technology and make new opportunities available for people with disabilities. It also encourages the development of technologies that will help achieve these goals. We are so fortunate to have Helen Chamberlain with us today. She was the center point of contact for the federal government Section 508 program for over 20 years. She designed, developed, and delivered Section 508 related training courses and so much more. To take us further into the topic, we're so pleased to have Russ with us, who is an expert in the technology field as well. His experience is using technology for conferencing for international clients is legend. He also managed and operated the Chief of Naval Education and Training Electronic Schoolhouse Network. I'm lucky to get to work with Helen and Russ regularly, so they are both active FGDLA board
Likewise.
members. Yeah, well, we do have a good time on the board. I'd give it that. So you all are used to working with the chat. So Helen has a lot of material to get through. She wants you to make sure you stay awake because she's got some really good stuff to tell you about. Stuff, I should never use that word, sorry. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. And when we get through with that, then we'll go through and answer questions in the chat. If for some reason we don't get to all of your chat and give you responses to them, we'll ask Helen to fill out some emails and we'll post them to get them to you.
And
So
Carla,
yeah.
if I could just add one thing to that, if
Mm-hmm.
anyone would like to be promoted to either a panelist or for me to activate uh, their microphone, please just send me a little message in the chat or the Q&A using that feature as well. And I, as the host, can promote them, can activate their microphones, or they can activate their cameras once they're promoted. So if they desire to do that, just send me a little message and say, turn me on.
Okay, and that would be like during the chat session or when we're doing Q&A, right? That's
anytime
wonderful.
throughout this webinar.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Helen, I think we're through with all the housekeeping items. So the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Carla. Good afternoon. As Carla said, my name is Helen Chamberlain, and I am retired from the federal government General Services Administration Office of Government-Wide Policy, where I worked for over 20 years, and I was director of the Section 508 program for a long time, from the very beginning in 1999 when we started all of this. So we've come a long way, and what I'm going to be going over today are two memos, okay, M23-22 and M24-08. And then Russ is going to do some Zoom accessibility features, and as an example of an application that has incorporated what we're going to be talking about today into their product. And then we'll have discussion. And as I just said, this is going to go over the two memos, and it's a lot of information. Hopefully you guys don't start snoring before I get halfway through it, but it's a lot of information. What I've tried to do is I have tried to pull out what I feel are the most pertinent points. Okay, so it's kind of verbatim, but not really. And we're going to go over these two memos. One was published by OMB in September of 23, and one was published in December of 23. And then, as I said, an additional aspect will focus on Zoom's accessibility features. And I'm going to initially start out with some background. So we know accessibility is essentially for promoting inclusion for individuals with disabilities, so that basically everybody has access to information and communication and technologies. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, as amended, was a big part of this. And it was the thing that was enacted to eliminate the barriers. And a lot of it has to do with procurement, but down the road, it has also morphed into helping agencies actually make their products and services accessible to people with disabilities. And the goal is obviously to develop these technologies so that people with disabilities can have access to them. And the Section 508 program, as I just said, is in GSA, in the Office of Government-Wide Policy, and it does offer assistance. There's a really good website that they have out there that has a lot of information on it, and resources and places you can go, and training and all kinds of things that you can use for your agency's development of a strong Section 508 program. So first, we're going to talk about M2322, delivering a digital-first public experience. This particular memo incorporates some of Section 508, some of the digital world, and it basically provides guidance to agencies on how to design and deliver their websites and digital services to the public. And it does this through the implementation of the 21st Century Integrated Digital Experience Act, which is a mouthful, but it's called IDEA for short. And this has been around for a while, and it's a good point of reference for you if you want to go and find out, what is going on, what's expected of agencies and things like that. And it basically summarizes everything for you. Each year, the federal government provides a lot of information, services, benefits, and all kinds of programs to more than 400 million people, families, businesses, organizations, employees, all kinds of people that need assistance from the federal government, from any of the agencies. And also, at this point in time, the majority of the public, they do access information online or from their mobile devices, which has become a big thing, or they have an iPad, or they have a tablet, or they have something like that. And because the channels are now the primary way that the public interacts, they, in this particular memo, want the executive agencies to design and develop their websites and digital services to the public's expectations. We're going to get into that a little bit, to provide a high quality experience and ease of use for people to get to this information, no matter what their ability is, because it can be confusing to people that don't have any kind of a disability, because there's just so much information out there. Excuse me, sorry, didn't turn all my bells off. Anyway, there's just so much information out there, and you know, it sometimes it can be overwhelming to the best of us. So, except as otherwise provided, this memorandum applies to all the executive agencies, and you can find them defined in the US Code, and all the websites, digital services, and things like that. And the thing is that it also applies to anything that's maintained by the agency directly or by a contractor. And as we know, a lot of agencies employ contractors to do a lot of this work, and they do fall under this directive. And, you know, again, as it's intended to be used by the public. And also the other thing, and we had a little bit of a hard time getting people to understand that not only does it apply to outward facing things, but it also applies to internal facing websites and services, because there are a lot of people in the federal government who have a disability, whether it's a visible disability or a hidden disability. And when I was there, we dealt with a lot of what we called hidden disabilities, because people were leery of telling anybody that they had a disability. A good example of that would be dyslexia. Sometimes people thought if they actually said that they had this type of disability, that it would interfere with their job, or it would prevent them from getting a promotion or something like that. So those are the kind of things that we've dealt with all along. And I like to think that we have come a long way into providing not only the services that people need, but the programs are such that a person doesn't feel that they can't come out and say that they have a disability. So giving them somewhere and somebody that they can go talk to that can help them and can make sure that, you know, obviously they're not discriminated against and things like that. The only thing this memorandum doesn't apply to are third-party websites and digital services, such as social media and things like that. And, you know, we really don't have any control over those. Accessible to people with diverse abilities for websites and digital services. In designing websites and digital services, you know, you have to strive for, you know, I'm having a problem here seeing my screen. Okay. You have to design your websites and digital services to strive from the start to maximize the accessibility and usability. And usability is another big thing that people don't think about. It can be accessible in your mind, but if someone can't use it, then you've just kind of wasted a lot of valuable time, and you have to go back and fix everything. And the thing that we found was a lot of people were in that situation where they had done what they thought were these great, wonderful things. And then they found out, oh gosh, this isn't really going to work for anybody. And then they had to just turn around and go back to the beginning. So that's the thing that a lot of people weren't happy about, but it was something that needed to be done. So requirements for websites and digital services in this particular memorandum is to design accessible experiences, obviously, and we're going to get into that a little bit, and to follow the standards. Section 508, WCAG is another standard, and you know, the ideas. And so tests, and the other big thing was testing for accessibility. We had a really big problem with that in the beginning, because not only were people not doing it, but they didn't know how to do it. And they were kind of, scratching their heads going, well, oh gosh, I have this huge application and I know it's supposed to be accessible, but how do I test? And that's where a lot of things came about. For example, the University of Illinois was one of the in the forefront that created a program. John Gunderson, who I love to death, he created this application that could help testing, and it would literally crawl through the application, and then it would give you a report that would tell you where you needed to fix things. And so he was in this very early on, and obviously over the years, these things have all morphed into bigger, better, more relevant tools. And promoting accessibility was another thing, and welcoming feedback. Feedbacks a lot of times is hard for people to accept, but we really tried hard to make our whole community realize that, it's not a bad thing to give feedback. Feedback is exactly what we need, because we don't want people to feel that they can't have access to something or they can't talk to us about it. And so we made it very, very important that our people, whether they were government employees or members of the public, knew that they would have somewhere that they could go and say, hey, this isn't working for me. What can we do to fix it? This is just a little blurb about 508. We're going to talk about it later on in the next memo, but the scope differs from the scope of this memorandum. For example, Section 508 applies broadly to electronic and information technology, not just websites and digital services. So Section 508 applies to the procurement of what is defined as information and communication technology, which could be a lot of things. And to add to that group, we have assistive technology, which assistive technology provides a tool for a person with a disability, such as a screen reader or magnification software or dyslexia software, which provides a link to the software, which makes the software accessible to the person that has the disability. And agencies are also responsible for determining the extent of their responsibilities under Section 508. So an agency, has all these wonderful tools, and we have all these guides and guidelines that you can use. And it is, I know it has been over the years and probably still is today, difficult. It's kind of sometimes like herding cats. You need to get a good group of people together and get focus and get buy-in from the heads of the agencies and the CIO and people like that to make your program work. We're going to talk a little bit about visual design, clear and consistent use of an agency's brand. So when you have a brand and you use it for visual design in your websites and digital services, and one of the big things that comes into play here is alt tags. And alt tags are tagging pictures and things like that so that a screen reader can read what is on the screen in an order that makes sense. And that was another big problem way back, is that you might have a screen with all this information on it, but the information was not organized in a pattern that a screen reader could read that would make any sense, such as the use of columns and things like that. If you had columns and you did not standardize them, then the screen reader would read the first line in each column and then go to the next line in each column, and it wouldn't read the column and then go to the next column. Again, all of that stuff has been updated and fixed. And again, this, the last part is just talking about color and contrast and things like that. Because you have to remember too, that you can't expect to know somebody the difference, have somebody know the difference between green and red, because they might be colorblind and it might either look all gray or different shades of brown to them. So you have to take all of these things into account too.
I sure am glad that when I was a surface warfare officer on an aircraft carrier that I wasn't colorblind and I could look through my binoculars and tell the color of all the ships, their lights at night from a pretty great distance, Helen.
Yeah, and that's and there are and
Yeah,
again, that's a hidden disability that people are afraid to
definitely.
say that they are colorblind again because they fear that it's going to affect their job or
Hmm.
something. Um, and again, agencies are responsible for this. So a lot of these things that are in both of these memos, the agencies are responsible for them. So basically, OMB is setting the guidelines and, GSA, Office of Government-Wide Policy, is tasked for the most part of the implementation of this. And another agency we're going to talk a little bit about is the Access Board, who actually is responsible for maintaining and updating and writing these types of laws and things that we have, like Section 508 and the ABA and the ADA. The use of the United States Web Design System. This is a system to ensure consistent appearance across public-facing websites. So basically, what this does is it gives you a guide to ensure that everything is consistent, and all public-facing websites and services have to comply with this. And I just put a note on the bottom. And by the way, if anyone wants a copy of this, because I do reference a lot of websites, please just shoot a note in the chat with your email, and I will be more than happy to send you a copy of the slides. As on this first slide here, this is a website to go to for an explanation of what this particular standard is. The user experience. Now, this is something that is really, it's been a chore to try and get done, because a lot of times everybody's in such a big hurry to get these things out that they don't consider the user. And irregardless of where we are now and where we were back then, it's always been sort of a problem. And agencies need to conduct the customer and user research. They need to do that. They need to understand their customers' needs. They need to make sure that their branding and other elements of their components and offices are accessible to people. Agencies should avoid the use of unnecessary pop-ups and other messages to interrupt the experience, which happens a lot. You'll be on a website and then all of a sudden something pops up in the middle of the screen. Well, it makes a screen reader have a heart attack, because the screen reader doesn't know what's going on, and all of a sudden the screen has popped up with all this other information on it. And things like this are things that we are trying to have people be aware of and consider when they're developing. Remove outdated content. Don't publish duplicate content. Retire duplicate websites and digital services. A lot of this, I know it's a lot of work, and some agencies don't have the manpower to do it, but it's something that kind of throws a monkey wrench into people with disabilities being able to go through the website in a logical manner to get their information. And get user feedback on your content. Have something on your screen at the bottom where you have all your other little links to information, user feedback, click here, tell us what you think. We want to know what you think, because you're the one that uses this website. And so we're, supposedly developing it for you. Plain language, that's another thing. Plain language has always been a thorn in a lot of people's sides. It's been around for quite a while, and it really is important, because, you're dealing with the public. And on another slide here in just a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But again, there's a memorandum on guidance for implementing the Plain Writing Act of 2010. So it's been around for a while. It just needs to be used. Now, I know what I've been having fun with is Grammarly. I loaded Grammarly on my machine, and I have just been having a good time with that, because I will be writing, a memo or something like that, and I'll write this whole paragraph, and then I'll put it in Grammarly. Grammarly will come back and it'll say, how it changed it. And 9 times out of 10, I end up using that because it's so much better than what I wrote. And I think I write in plain language. So, I mean, you have to take all this in account. Optimizing content to help the public find what they're looking for. And I know we've all gone to websites where we want to look for a particular thing, and all of a sudden you're like, well, there's not even anything listed here that remotely resembles what I'm looking for. Where am I supposed to go? And I run into that all the time, just trying to find simple things that you would think, okay, this should be listed, but it's, that's another problem. And of course, on top of everything else, security is very important. You should consider that throughout all stages of the development and design of your products, all through the life cycle. So again, taking the user-centered and data-driven design, start with the user's wants and needs. And we already talked about doing user research. Engage the users throughout the design. I can't tell you how many times in my career I would have a product that was designed, and then we would take it to the users and they would sit there and look at it and say, well, what is this? This doesn't look anything like what we've been using. It doesn't do anything we need. So the user engagement is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And also testing. You can have the users involved in the development because they're the ones that have to use the product, so they know what they need to do to get their job done. But then when you test the product, it's important to have them there to tell you, well, this doesn't quite work the way we need it to work. You need to make it clearer, or you need to make more areas that we can access through this. And when we were developing our Buy Accessible Wizard tool, we went through all of this, trying to make this a design that would make sense to our users so that they could use it to help them make a procurement and not have to do all these steps. And we already talked about this, and a lot of people these days, they are going onto their phones for information. They're using the digital services, and they should be mobile friendly. They should be exactly the same level of accessibility as if the person was sitting in front of a computer. It's a little bit more difficult, and it's probably a little bit more painful, but you need to be able to navigate all of your apps on both. And a lot of times these days they're having they have a mobile application and an application that can be used on the computer. A little bit different, but they should basically work the same. So now we're going to talk a little bit about M2408, which is, and I can't read this. I don't know if I can, whoops. It's strengthening accessibility and the management of Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. And this one was put out in December of 2023. This one strictly deals with 508, provides guidance to help agencies with their accessibility programs so that they can provide information for members of the public and federal employees. And again, it applies to all agencies that develop, procure, maintain, or use electronic and information technology. And I'm going to kind of breeze through this because I want Russ to have enough time to do his. Basically, you need to establish digital accessibility programs and policies. You need to have a Section 508 office, buy accessible products and services. Section 508.gov has a tool that you can use to do that. Design and develop accessible digital experiences. Create, communicate, and deliver accessible content. Evaluate, monitor, collect feedback. Remediate for accessibility, which is another really important thing. And cultivate a positive culture, which has been a little painful, but I think that we've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I am not going to really go into this, but this is just an encapsulation of what you're supposed to be doing within 30 days, 90 days, establishing your program, updating your digital accessibility statements, public feedback, comprehensive assessments of your policies to assure that accessibility is incorporated into them. And they're trying to bring back the OMB annual report, which we had for a while, and it's kind of like gone into a black hole. Again, the Access Board and GSA, Office of Government-Wide Policy, are both involved in that. And here's just some information where you can go for inquiries regarding this memorandum. So you can go to OMB Office of Federal Chief Information Officer via email, and additional technical assistance, as I've said, Section 508 and the Access Board provide any kind of information and assistance you would need. Do not feel that you cannot contact either one of them, because they both have excellent teams that can help you answer any questions and provide you assistance. And again, these are more places that you can go. I've tried to list the most important ones. And as I said, if you want this presentation, please put a note in the chat with your email and your name, and I will send you a copy of the presentation.
You have 3 requests currently for the presentation slides, Helen.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully nobody's snoring. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Russ.
Well, before you do that, Helen, Kelly has a question in the chat, and it's related to UX and the OMB memo situation. Would you mind answering, Kelly?
It's a usability memo.
So the question is, do you feel UX is just as necessary for disabilities as Section 508? That's the question. And is this a part of the Office of Management and Budget memo implicity?
Well, I mean, definitely I feel UX is important because it's been dismissed for so long. And, a lot of the things that I talked about I feel are important, because the user definitely has to be involved. You have to have their involvement throughout the development process. You have to have their involvement throughout the testing process. You have to, request input from them and have them let you know. Otherwise, you're going to spend all this money and you're not going to have a good product to show for it. Nobody's going to use it. And we've all been there and done that before too, including myself. So as for the OMB part, I'm not quite sure. I can certainly, if you want to chat about this offline, we can put our heads together and see what we can come up with. You can, my email, Russ, why don't you put my email out in the chat to everybody if they want to contact me.
Carla's working on that right as we speak.
I can refer them to people who would know more about this than me. I mean, I've been retired, so I try and keep up, but things move fast. But thank you. I will definitely.
You didn't cover, I don't think you covered this one yet. There are some federal agencies that have YouTube channels and or LinkedIn pages. Are they not required to be 508 compliant?
That would fall under social media, and at this point, I don't think we have any control over that. The only control we have over it is whether or not your agency deems to use it. And there are quite a few agencies, or there were when I was still there, that did not use those because they weren't accessible. And if they have not made their applications accessible by now, then there are probably still agencies that don't let people use them.
To note maybe at this point that when we were putting together our new webpage, Helen kept us all on our toes, making sure that our webpage was accessible. So, it's a wonderful example of what can be done when a bunch of people are really determined to get it right. So, Helen, thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. Russ, do you see any other questions in the?
I didn't see any other ones, Carla.
Okay, all right, fine. So, Russ, the floor is yours.
So again, thank you, Helen, for the way you let us, the federal government DLA, build our website. We have a lot of those reader alerts and sizes and colors incorporated in our website. So thank you for that guidance that you provided. So Carla, let me just say this. So this next portion of the webinar today is really given from a user standpoint. I'm a user of Zoom. It's just one application that I chose to use today to highlight because we use Zoom as a part of our webinars and our meetings and our recordings. So it could be any, but I particularly like one capability, and it's related to captions. And notice I didn't say open captioning, I didn't say closed captioning, because I think the terminology is changing a little bit. I said the word captions because captions now can occur in a lot of different ways. So from the Zoom standpoint, there's really a philosophy like Helen described of building settings, a complete experience. And you can see the slides, and I'll just follow these slides down through, and then I'll provide a demonstration of captioning in multiple languages, up to 35 of them. Yes, 35 languages. Okay. So Zoom looks at accessibility as a complete experience settings for display devices so people can read information, and keyboard so keyboards can be communicated with, and that relates to communicating with people, and screen sizes and colors and screen reader alerts. Now, Helen mentioned this, but if you look at what a screen reader needs to do, it needs to alert the person that's watching or listening either through something flashing or a color changing or or striped lines or something gets larger or smaller. So alerts that trigger a person knowing and having the same ability as anyone else in a synchronous or an asynchronous setting. I love that a lot. And the post meeting recording the highlights and the search. So if you noticed and you listened, I started the recording at the beginning of this meeting, and it will be rendered and available to us to watch or post or to search or even get highlights, so that if I missed something you said, Carla, I can go back and listen and watch it one, two, three, or four, or as many times as I need until my understanding is correct and I'm confident in the material that's been discussed. So I love that a lot. And I love the fact that I can send you meeting links. I don't have to try and send you the entire recording of an hour, which would take up around the world time and transmission. I can send you the link, and it's easy for you to access the information. I can password it for security so that someone unauthorized is not receiving the information. So as a person involved in a meeting or a host, I have a lot of controls that give me high confidence for everyone that's involved in a collaborative session or even offline as well. Now, the flip side of that coin is real-time collaboration. And so this is where I would really like to get into captioning. So think about a courtroom today's courtrooms. The judge or an attorney will speak, and the court reporter uses a machine, and he or she uses that machine to quickly listen and to quickly type information that's used to display textual information that can be used, and it's oftentimes called captioning, is included in the recording, and everyone can see it to facilitate increased understanding among everyone in a doctor setting, in a courtroom setting, in a government meeting, in an educational class, in a training class, no matter what those markets are using captioning. But manual, other than a stenographer, is is slow and cumbersome. Carla, you have to speak, I have to listen and type what you say. Now, I've done this before, And let me tell you what, when the speaker starts speaking fast, I, by typing, starts going to pieces. And I really cannot say, excuse me, stop, let me type and get caught up. Or by the time they're around the corner, I'm just trying to catch up. And by that time, it's easy for me to misunderstand or forget what I should have been typing. And so the accuracy of my manual captioning is very, very poor. Now, us in the industry, when I worked at Polycom and Cisco and Zoom at various positions, which I love very much, all of those companies, we as a market manager were fighting our companies day and night to be compliant, Helen, with accessibility features. This manual captioning, it's great. It was better than nothing, and so we could click a check mark that we were in compliance or supportive of Section 508, whether the original document or the revised document. So we could make the check mark, but in reality, it didn't do squat for our real users of the technology. Now, having said that in the past, in today's world, it's a piece of cake. It really is. It's easy. And yes, Sandy, which has owned the meeting with us today, we can use artificial intelligence to activate with very high levels of accuracy, voice to text. And so as I speak, then myself or any of you on this webinar today can simply, in the in meeting controls at the bottom or top of your screen, can click on CC, and you know what that stands for, closed captioning, and activate the graphical text of what I'm speaking in real time. And not only can you do it in real time, but you can do it in your desired language. So if you do not speak English or Spanish, and Sandy, I know you got a comment coming up. I heard your microphone activate. I can activate my reading in Arabic or in Spanish or in Italian or in German or in Tagalog if I'm in the Philippines. It's really amazing. The I've done this with, thankfully, with organizations like the United Nations and with World Health Organization and a little bit with NATO. So you can imagine United Nations needing this kind of voice to text, not only for disabilities, but just for every day-to-day communications between people. Sandy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, that's what I was just typing. That's great. Sorry, Russ. I hope didn't mean to distract you. Yeah, I think the AI is important, and I like that you also highlighted for, I think accessibility is, definitely, people with disabilities, but there's also other uses that we need to consider that, are beneficial, especially for our government organizations. So yeah, thank you. That was all. Appreciate it.
Sandy, thank you. And thank you for your service at Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California.
Oh, thanks, Russ.
Thank you. So you can see, folks, that I'm excited because we live in a collaborative world now that we no longer have to deal with this slow closed captioning or captionings, as we call it today. It's fast, it's accurate, and these organizations, like, think about it, United Nations, where you've got political decisions being made, the accuracy of your communication has to be 100%, or in the doctor's office, or in a courtroom, any of those kind of applications. Now, in addition, and we'll show this, we'll talk about this, we'll play with this in just a moment, but the triad or the third level from Zoom standpoint is video options. And I've used at least one of them today when I spotlighted Helen, because she was the speaker and she was the speaker for about 30 minutes. So to give you, the audience, the best view of Helen, I spotlighted her. Now, she could have done that herself, but I did it. And that could have been just for you so that you could see Helen's nonverbal activity, the color of her blouse, to facilitate effective communications. but I could have done that for if she were using American Sign Language. So if she were signing, uh, her image wouldn't have jumped around and went to a small box and moved around. Everyone watching her could have really continued to focus on her sign language. And that's very important, I believe, with spotlighting and pinning. So pinning or multiple pinning allows you as the viewer, the attendee of a meeting or a webinar to pin a particular person. And the way this happens is, think about it. You've seen all these gallery images of many people in a meeting, right, Carla?
Yeah.
So you can pin if you don't want to see that many, if you want to focus on one person or two people because they are talking, they are doing language translation, Sandy, maybe in one of your meetings, then you can pin that person and keep just your screen, giving you control of what you see on your screen during a meeting, a session, a training class, an educational course, that kind of thing. So I think that's important. And if you are looking, and each of you should have the ability to look at the speaker view or a gallery view, or even even a different type of viewing for your screen, you have the ability then to rearrange the panes or the people in the screen, the gallery view. So if you want Carla on the upper left-hand corner, you simply, it's like swiping with your smartphones. You can move Carla to the top, or you can move me to the bottom. So you have the ability to move people around on your screen and to create good visual clarity with those video options. Now, the references that Zoom uses are kind of like the same references that Helen mentioned, but without a doubt, Section 508 is the most understood, most followed guideline for companies, for at least for Zoom, to build capabilities, functions, and features with accessibility in mind. Now,
Russ, let
yes,
me ask you this.
yes,
In the
Carla.
past, I think question has come up, and let me just ask it again. Is Zoom, do you think, working on the idea of being able to interpret an American Sign Language interpreter and translate that into another language or even into English?
Carla, when the last time you and I met with Dr. Lance Ford from
Mhm.
Zoom, he indicated not yet available. But with the way AI is progressing like faster than shooting a rocket to the moon,
Yeah,
I think the answer is we can expect that, almost like the past when we were hoping for voice to text.
yeah.
So interpreting American Sign Language, I think, is something that we're going to see in the near future.
Thank you. I just wondered if you'd had any updates, so something to follow.
Definitely,
Definitely.
definitely. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing there for a second, and I'd like to just play and show you a little bit. So let me explain to the attendees and the audience that's watching. Zoom has in-meeting controls, and they can appear on your screen no matter what position you hold in a meeting or in a webinar. These in-meeting controls are spread out along the bottom. You can move them. Sometimes they appear on the top. And the quickest and the easiest way, if you're hearing impaired, if you need access to accessibility features, is for you to do a left mouse click on CC, show captions. When you show captions, it'll give you a menu, drop-down menu. You can decrease the size of the captions. You can increase the size of captions. You can change the color of captions. You can have Zoom show you the entire transcript of the captions. Basically, at your fingertips is a lot of functions. So what I'm going to do is just to show you this, I'm going to show you or share with you my entire screen. Okay, so this is the desktop for me. And this desktop, let me just see if I can take that out of the way here. And let's see, let me come back here and up here. And let's see, and I see Kelly has raised her hand. Carla, do you want to get the question from Kelly? And Kelly, if you'll just put your question in the chat, that will be great. Okay, so what I've done here is, and you see this on my screen with the part of my desktop showing, is I've activated the captioning for myself. And hopefully you've done this also, because I have pre-designated that I will be speaking in English. I see, and now you see through my sharing of my screen, my captions. And this is the voice to text that we're talking about. No one is typing this. I'm crossing my arms to show you I'm not typing. And it's accurate. So
Not
if I,
seeing anything. At least I'm not seeing anything.
you're
Not,
not,
You should be seeing a
anything.
captioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
yes.
not seeing it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully the audience is seeing it on their own.
Oh, it's on another screen, somebody said.
It's on a second screen.
Yeah,
You're,
Okay.
I've only got
you're
one
only seeing
screen.
your home page.
Okay. Okay. Let me try. Let me try something else here. So I'll stop that share. Okay. So Carla or Helen, do you see anything coming from me now? Do you see the captions?
No,
You don't see any captions.
no, we got the
Okay.
quadruple.
Somebody said, Leah said she sees the captions. I see, but she clicked the CC button. Oh,
Yes,
so you
yes.
have to
Please,
click the CC button.
please do that.
Oh,
Yes.
there we go. Click.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody needs to click the CC button.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to try and show it another way also by showing my entire screen, but maybe that's not working when I do that. But I also now see
It's
from,
working now.
Yeah, it
yeah,
works really well, Russ, when you, because I'm seeing that coming up with
Yeah.
your picture. Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
coming up on the regular screen. It's coming in place where you would normally see the chat or who's on the meeting.
and
Oh, and then,
it's everyone in the meeting. So I even see
yeah,
some Arabic there.
yeah,
Right. Yes.
it's, I see from my speaking language, and that's even, I mean, for us at DLI, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm
It
gonna be
really
French.
is. And look at, and Sandy, take a look. I mean, not only has the industry progressed to be able to do this, but I mean, the part of the problem that United Nations has is they didn't believe that the accuracy was high enough until they tested it over and over and over again.
Exactly.
And that's when their confidence started to build.
Right.
And
Well,
What's the percentage at this
Now
point?
Sandy's speaking French.
est-ce que tu veux que je parle en français?
No.
we,
Pardon.
and because my notice I've got my glasses on, so my eyesight's a little, Helen, I'm a little visual impaired, so I made my captions large. So these things are not like a little, fine one font size. I've got mine very large on my screen, so there's no way in the world I'm missing this. I'm getting it all.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Well, and Russ, what I was going to say about the accuracy of AI, and I'm going to qualify it, it's not for everything, with space information sometimes, but for languages, we've been training like Google Translate and all these other translation online resources so much that there's so much in those algorithms that has made language translation more accurate. So I think that's what you're seeing, the benefits of that, if anybody needs that particular feature. Even though you still want someone to verify, but for something like this, yeah, we're getting really accurate.
Yeah, and Leah was just indicating that she saw a name misprinted Carl instead of Carla. So it does make mistakes.
Yes.
It's not 100%.
No, but that's transcription.
Hmm.
Yeah. So much.
And also for Donna, Donna, thank you. I know there's a setting that would allow me to share my entire desktop, and that's what I tried in the beginning,
Yep.
and it normally works. It's probably user error on my part. You know, when I worked for Polycom for quite a while, and I did a million educational demonstrations. And whenever the technology wouldn't work for me, I always took the blame, and I would tell the audience, "Whoops, I made a mistake."
It makes you human. That's good.
I think it's great too.
Thank you. Thank you both, Sandy and Helen. So, Carla, we are approaching the conclusion of our webinar today, and that's everything that I would, desire to share with our audience. So, may I please turn the floor back to you?
Yeah, I was just looking, take a quick look through the chat and see if there's anything there. There was one from Valerie who said, "Can you speak to ARTT?"
I talked to her offline.
Oh, okay, all right. Did the rest of us know what you said?
Well, I just told her I thought it was what it was a tool that and I'm speaking German now. I thought it was the tool that replaced the by accessible wizard, and it's on section 508.gov.
Okay, and all right, if anybody got a question they want to put in, we got a couple of minutes, we can take it. So people are thanking you, Helen, and thanking you, Russ.
Thank you all.
Yeah, this has really been an interesting session. I know you were, concerned about the density of it, Helen, but I think every once in a while we have to get down and really look at the major details, and that's the important thing. And being able to do that today was really important. So thank you so much. Russ, thank you for the demonstration. As always, I mean, you know so much about how to use this technology. I swear I'm going to take one whole session and we're going to find out what else you know about Zoom that the rest of us haven't got a clue.
Exactly.
So, I mean, every time we talk to you, it's like, oh yeah, that'll do that.
Well, I can say this, Carla, it is an amazing platform. And there are other platforms like Teams and Cisco WebEx and others, which and Adobe Connect, which I know the Marine Corps is very uses it on very often with Erica, and so there are other platforms. It's not just this one, but I love this one because it's so extensive. Not only is it a meeting tool, it's a phone system. It's 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 20 different things packaged into one solution, and it can be free. It can be. Sometimes there's a charge for as you start adding on features to it, but the charge is very affordable for individuals and for businesses.
Yeah, it really is. Well, thank you all so very much for being with us this afternoon. We do appreciate it. In a couple of days, we will have the entire webinar posted on usdla.us. So if there are people that you feel or whom you feel should have been here today but couldn't make it, please direct them to the site so that they can watch it. We archive all of the webinars, so there's a real wealth of information there. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you on April 17th.
And I do have everyone's email address that I will be mailing the slides to.
Okay. So you got a copy of the of the page at this point?